Just hours after speaking openly in a high-profile interview, Mel Gibson found himself under arrest, sending shockwaves through Hollywood and around the world. For a man already surrounded by controversy, the incident became another turning point in a life filled with incredible success, painful mistakes, public backlash, and surprising comebacks. But how did one of Hollywood's biggest stars reach this moment, and what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? But long before the flashing cameras, Oscar awards, and worldwide controversy, Mel Gibson was simply a young boy trying to find his place in a rapidly changing world. Few could have imagined that this quiet child would one day become one of Hollywood's biggest stars, or that his life would later become one of its most debated stories. Mel Sil Gerard Gibson was born on January 3, 1956, in Peekskill, New York. He was the sixth of 11 children in a large Irish Catholic family. Life inside the Gibson home was busy, noisy, and built around strong religious beliefs and family values. With so many brothers and sisters, everyone learned early how to share, compete, and stand up for themselves. His father, Hutton Gibson, was known for holding very strong opinions. He often questioned authority and believed in ideas that many people disagreed with. His mother and Patricia Gibson focused on caring for the family's large household. Together, they created an environment that deeply influenced Mel's personality and outlook on life. When Mel was just 12 years old, everything changed. The Gibson family left the United States and moved thousands of miles away to Sydney, Australia. According to public records and later interviews, the move came after Mel's father won money on the television game show Jeopardy! And believed Australia offered better opportunities for the family during a time of social and political change in America. For a young boy, leaving behind friends, familiar places, and everything he knew was not easy. Australia felt different. The schools, the culture, and even the way people spoke were unfamiliar. Like many children starting over in a new country, Mel had to adjust quickly. He learned to observe people, adapt to new situations, and build confidence little by little. Looking back, this move became one of the biggest turning points in his life. Here's a question for you. Do you think a person's childhood shapes their future more than natural talent does? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As Mel grew older, he did not dream of becoming a Hollywood superstar. In fact, acting was not even his first choice. He enjoyed sports and had considered other career paths. Friends later described him as energetic, funny, and willing to take risks, but few expected him to become an actor. Then something unexpected happened. His older sister secretly submitted an application for him to the National Institute of Dramatic Art, often called NIDA, one of Australia's most respected acting schools. Mel attended the audition almost by accident. The judges immediately noticed something unusual. He had natural confidence in front of people. His expressions felt real. His voice carried emotion. Even without years of training, there was something about him that captured attention. He was accepted into the school. At NIDA, Mel studied alongside talented young actors who would also build successful careers. The training was demanding. Students spent long hours learning movement, speech, and stage performance. Every mistake became a lesson. Every performance pushed them to improve. For Mel, acting slowly became more than a hobby. It became a way to challenge himself. He discovered that he could become someone completely different every time he stepped onto a stage. That ability fascinated him and gave him a sense of purpose. After graduating, he began working in Australian theatre and television. The jobs were small. The pay was limited. Sometimes he had no idea where the next opportunity would come from. Like thousands of young actors, he faced uncertainty. Success did not arrive overnight. Every audition brought hope, but also the possibility of rejection. Every role required patience. Behind every small achievement was another obstacle waiting around the corner. Still, Mel refused to quit. His determination slowly earned him respect inside the Australian film industry. Directors noticed his commitment. Fellow actors admired his energy. One opportunity led to another. But none of them knew that a single movie was about to change everything. Before long, a low-budget action film featuring fast cars, dangerous roads, and a little-known actor named Mel Gibson would capture audiences around the world. That film would not only launch his career, but also begin a journey filled with extraordinary success, enormous pressure, and decisions that would shape the rest of his life. And although fame was finally within reach, the greatest challenges Mel Gibson would ever face were still far ahead. But what happened next changed everything. One low-budget movie turned an unknown actor into an international sensation almost overnight. Yet, as Mel Gibson's career soared higher than anyone imagined, the pressure to stay at the top quietly began to grow. In 1979, Mel Gibson landed the leading role in a small Australian film called Mad Max. At the time, no one expected it to become a worldwide phenomenon. The movie had a limited budget, and many people believed it would simply be another action film. They were wrong. Audiences were drawn to its intense action, unforgettable car chases, and Gibson's powerful performance as Max Rockatansky, a police officer trying to survive in a violent world. The film became a massive international success and earned millions of dollars at the box office. It also helped introduce Australian cinema to viewers around the globe. Almost overnight, Mel Gibson became a rising star. Soon after, he starred in Gallipoli, a war drama directed by Peter Weir. Unlike Mad Max, this film showed a different side of his acting. Instead of explosive action, Gibson delivered an emotional performance that earned praise from critics and proved he was much more than an action hero. Hollywood took notice. Offers from major studios began arriving. Gibson now had the chance to build an international career, but moving to Hollywood came with new challenges. Competition was fierce. Every role mattered. One bad decision could change everything. Instead of slowing down, he kept working. In the early 1980s, he returned as Max in Mad Max 2, known in some countries as the Road Warrior. The sequel became another huge success and cemented his reputation as one of the most exciting actors of his generation. Then came another defining moment. In 1987, Gibson starred alongside Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. The buddy cop film mixed action, humor, and emotion in a way audiences loved. Gibson's character, Martin Riggs, was reckless, funny, and deeply troubled, making him one of the most memorable action heroes of the decade. The film became a blockbuster. It also launched a franchise that lasted for years and earned hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide. By the end of the 1980s, Mel Gibson was no longer just a movie star. He was one of Hollywood's biggest names. Money, fame, and recognition followed. Magazine covers featured his face. Fans lined up outside premieres. Directors wanted him in their biggest projects. But success brought a different kind of pressure. Every new movie carried enormous expectations. Every public appearance attracted attention. Every decision was watched by millions. Many people dream about becoming famous. Few understand how difficult it can be to live under constant public attention. Despite the pressure, Gibson continued taking on ambitious roles. He appeared in films such as Hamlet, showing once again that he could handle serious dramatic performances just as well as action films. Then he decided to take an even bigger risk. He wanted to direct. Many actors try directing, but few succeed. Studios were uncertain about trusting one of their biggest stars with such an important responsibility. Mel believed he could do it. In 1995, he directed and starred in Braveheart. The historical epic told the story of Scottish hero William Wallace. The production was challenging. It required massive battle scenes, detailed costumes, and difficult filming conditions. Some people doubted the project would succeed. Instead, it became one of the biggest films of the year. Braveheart won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Mel Gibson. Winning an Oscar as a director placed him in an entirely new category. He was no longer just an actor. He had become one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. At the height of his success, it seemed like nothing could stop him. Around this time, Gibson also built his own production company, Icon Productions. The company gave him greater creative control over the stories he wanted to tell, allowing him to make films on his own terms rather than relying entirely on major studios. If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind Hollywood's biggest names, subscribe now. Some of the most surprising moments in this journey are still ahead, and they reveal a side of fame that many people never see. Then in 2004, Gibson released The Passion of the Christ. The film sparked intense debate because of its graphic violence and religious themes. While some critics questioned parts of the movie, audiences around the world made it an extraordinary commercial success. According to publicly reported box office figures, the film earned more than $600 million worldwide, becoming one of the highest-grossing R-rated films in history. It was another remarkable achievement. Yet behind the awards, record-breaking films, and growing fortune, cracks were beginning to appear. The demands of fame, personal struggles, and increasing public scrutiny were creating pressures that few people fully understood. To the outside world, Mel Gibson seemed unstoppable, but away from the cameras, problems were quietly building. And within just a few years, one interview, one late-night traffic stop, and one series of decisions would change both his career and his public image forever. Just when it seemed Mel Gibson had reached the peak of his career, everything began to fall apart. Within hours of a widely discussed interview, a single late-night traffic stop would become one of the most damaging moments of his life, and the headlines would spread around the world. By 2006, Mel Gibson was one of the most recognizable people in Hollywood. He had starred in blockbuster films, won Academy Awards, and directed movies that earned hundreds of millions of dollars. But behind the scenes, he was struggling. In later interviews, Gibson openly admitted that he had battled alcohol addiction for many years. He said drinking had become a serious problem long before the public knew about it. Although he had experienced periods of sobriety, the pressure of fame and personal challenges made staying on that path difficult. Few people outside his inner circle understood how serious the situation had become. Earlier that year, Gibson gave interviews while promoting his work. He appeared confident and focused. To many viewers, he looked like a filmmaker who still had complete control over his career. But appearances can be misleading. On the night of July 28, 2006, everything changed. According to police records, Gibson was driving in Malibu, California, when he was stopped by a sheriff's deputy for speeding. Officers reported that he appeared to be under the influence of alcohol. He was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence, commonly known as DUI. What happened during that arrest shocked even people who had admired his work for years. According to the official arrest report and multiple news accounts at the time, Gibson made offensive and anti-Semitic remarks toward one of the officers. When details of those comments became public, they spread rapidly across newspapers, television broadcasts, and the internet. The reaction was immediate. Many people were deeply offended. Others wondered how one of Hollywood's biggest stars could damage his reputation so quickly. Within hours, the story had become international news. The arrest itself was serious, but the reported remarks made the controversy much larger. Instead of discussing his movies, the public was now talking about his behavior. Soon afterward, Gibson released a public statement. He apologized for his actions and described his comments as despicable. He also acknowledged his struggle with alcoholism and said he had entered a recovery program. Over the years, he repeated similar apologies in several interviews, saying there was no excuse for what he had said. Still, the damage had already been done. Studios became cautious. Business partners worried about public reaction. Many people who had once celebrated his achievements now questioned whether they wanted to work with him again. Hollywood can be quick to celebrate success. It can also be quick to distance itself from controversy. If you've ever seen someone's entire reputation change because of one decision, you know how quickly life can turn. Success can take decades to build, but sometimes only a single night to put at risk. As the months passed, Gibson stayed largely out of the spotlight. His legal case moved forward through the court system. He pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor DUI charge and received probation, fines, and required participation in an alcohol education program, according to court records. For many celebrities, such an incident would have faded with time. For Mel Gibson, it was only the beginning. The arrest brought renewed attention to his personal life, his past interviews, and his public image. Journalists began examining every part of his career. Every appearance was analyzed, every statement received intense scrutiny. Then came even more difficult years. Future controversies, including leaked private recordings during a highly publicized dispute with former partner Oksana Grigorieva, would create another wave of criticism and legal battles. Those events further damaged his reputation and made any return to Hollywood even more complicated. But despite everything, one question remained. Could Mel Gibson ever rebuild the trust he had lost? Many believed his career was finished forever. Others argued that people should be judged by whether they take responsibility and change. The debate continues even today. What is certain is that the arrest in 2006 became a defining moment, not because it erased his earlier achievements, but because it permanently changed the way many people viewed him. And as his public image collapsed, the hardest chapter of his life was only just beginning. Just when many thought the worst was over, an even deeper crisis emerged. The headlines became harsher, old supporters grew silent, and Mel Gibson found himself fighting not for another blockbuster, but for his reputation. The years after the 2006 arrest were some of the most difficult of Mel Gibson's life. Although he had apologized publicly and completed the legal requirements related to his DUI case, many people felt that an apology alone was not enough. Hollywood studios became increasingly hesitant to cast him in major projects. For the first time in decades, one of the industry's biggest stars was struggling to find opportunities. Then, in 2010, another controversy exploded. Mel Gibson became involved in a highly publicized dispute with his former partner, Oksana Grigorieva, with whom he shared a daughter. Their legal battle quickly attracted worldwide media attention. Soon afterward, a series of secretly recorded phone conversations was released to the public. The recordings contained angry, offensive, and threatening remarks. News organizations across the world covered them extensively. The reaction was swift and severe. Many people who had defended Gibson after the 2006 incident now found it much harder to do so. The controversy became bigger than any movie he had ever made. According to court records, Gibson later pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge of battery related to the domestic dispute. He was sentenced to probation, community service, counseling, and fines. The legal process brought even more attention to his personal struggles. For Hollywood executives, the situation created enormous risk. Studios worried that hiring Gibson could lead to public criticism or hurt ticket sales. Some projects disappeared. Invitations became less frequent. The actor, who had once been one of the highest-paid stars in the world, suddenly found himself on the outside looking in. It was a dramatic fall. Only a few years earlier, he had stood on the Academy Awards stage, accepting one of filmmaking's highest honors. Now, many questioned whether he would ever direct another major film. Yet away from the cameras, Gibson continued working on himself. In later interviews, he spoke openly about addiction, recovery, and the mistakes he had made. He repeatedly acknowledged that alcohol had played a destructive role in his life, while also accepting responsibility for his actions rather than blaming alcohol alone. Recovery, however, is rarely simple. Rebuilding trust can take much longer than rebuilding a career. Many public figures have learned that audiences can forgive failure more easily than they forgive broken trust. For Gibson, every interview became an opportunity to answer difficult questions. Every public appearance reminded people of his past. There was no easy way forward. If you've been following this story, consider subscribing. The journeys of famous people often reveal that success isn't only about reaching the top, it's also about what happens after everything seems to fall apart. As the years passed, something unexpected began to happen. A small number of filmmakers and actors were willing to work with him again. Some believed he remained an exceptionally talented director and actor. Others argued that enough time had passed for him to have another chance. Still, opinions remained deeply divided. Some audiences welcomed his return. Others believed his past actions should continue to define his place in Hollywood. There was no clear agreement. Everyone faces moments when they make mistakes or watch their lives take an unexpected turn. While most of us never experience those moments in front of millions of people, the challenge of rebuilding trust and moving forward is something many people can understand in their own lives. Despite the controversy, Gibson never completely disappeared from filmmaking. He continued developing projects behind the scenes, determined to prove that his creative abilities had not disappeared. That determination would soon lead to one of the most surprising comebacks in modern Hollywood. A film about courage during World War II would remind critics why Mel Gibson had once been considered one of the industry's finest directors. But even as awards and praise slowly returned, one question refused to go away: can extraordinary talent ever outweigh extraordinary controversy? The answer depends on who you ask, and that question continues to shape Mel Gibson's legacy to this day. Just when many believed Mel Gibson's story was over, he proved there was another side to his success. Behind the headlines and controversies stood a businessman, producer, and filmmaker who had quietly built an empire that reached far beyond acting. For most people, Mel Gibson is remembered as an actor. Others know him as an Oscar-winning director. But there is another part of his story that often receives less attention: his business decisions. Long before many actors began creating their own production companies, Gibson understood something important. If you own the story, you have more control over your future. That idea led him to co-found Icon Productions in the late 1980s. Instead of depending entirely on major Hollywood studios, the company gave him the freedom to produce films he believed in. It was a bold move. Running a production company is very different from acting. It requires managing budgets, hiring crews, negotiating with studios, and making difficult financial decisions. Sometimes the risks are enormous, but Gibson was willing to take them. One of the biggest examples came with The Passion of the Christ. Many major studios were reluctant to finance the film because they believed it was too controversial and too risky. Rather than abandon the project, Gibson reportedly invested a significant amount of his own money into making it. It was one of the biggest financial gambles of his career. If the movie had failed, the losses could have been enormous. Instead, it became a global box office success. According to publicly reported box office figures, the film earned more than $600 million worldwide against a much smaller production budget. It became one of the most profitable independent films ever made. The success dramatically increased Gibson's wealth. It also showed Hollywood that taking creative risks could sometimes produce extraordinary results. Money from successful films allowed Gibson to expand his investments. Public records and financial reports over the years have shown that he invested in valuable real estate, including properties in California, Costa Rica, Australia, and other locations. Some of these estates attracted attention because of their size, privacy, and breathtaking scenery. Unlike many celebrities, Gibson has generally kept much of his investment strategy private. He has rarely spoken in detail about his finances. Even so, financial publications have regularly estimated his net worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars, although exact figures vary because many of his private investments are not publicly disclosed. His influence also extended behind the camera. As a producer, Gibson helped bring stories to life that might never have reached audiences without his support. Then came another remarkable chapter. In 2016, Gibson directed Hacksaw Ridge, the true story of Desmond Doss, a U.S. Army medic who refused to carry a weapon during World War II but saved dozens of soldiers in battle. The film received widespread praise from critics. It earned multiple Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director for Gibson. For many observers, it marked an unexpected return. The filmmaker many believed Hollywood had left behind was once again being recognized for his talent. That comeback surprised people across the industry. Some viewed it as proof that exceptional filmmaking could still earn respect despite years of controversy. Others continued to believe that his past actions should remain part of any discussion about his career. The debate never completely disappeared. If you're enjoying uncovering the untold business and personal stories behind some of the world's biggest stars, subscribe now. There are many more remarkable journeys where success, failure, and resilience are far more complicated than they first appear. Perhaps the biggest lesson from Gibson's financial journey is that he never relied on acting alone. He created opportunities. He invested in projects he believed in. He accepted enormous risks that many others would have avoided. Sometimes those risks paid off. Sometimes they brought criticism. But they always showed his willingness to bet on his own vision. His career became a reminder that lasting influence often comes from owning ideas, not just performing in them. Still, even with awards, wealth, and another successful directing career, one final question remained. How will history remember Mel Gibson? As a brilliant filmmaker? A controversial public figure? Or someone whose life became a mixture of both? That answer may take generations to settle. After decades of triumph, controversy, and comeback, Mel Gibson's story remains unfinished. Few people have reached such incredible heights, fallen so publicly, and then found a way back into the conversation. But perhaps the biggest question isn't what Mel Gibson achieved, it's what history will ultimately remember. By the mid-2010s, Mel Gibson had slowly returned to Hollywood. It was not the dramatic comeback many people expected. Instead, it happened one step at a time. His directing work on Hacksaw Ridge reminded audiences and critics of the talent that had earned him an Academy Award years earlier. The film's emotional storytelling, powerful performances, and technical excellence proved that Gibson still had a remarkable eye for filmmaking. Awards followed. Critical praise returned. But public opinion remained divided. Some believed his professional achievements deserved recognition. Others argued that his past controversies could never be separated from his legacy. That debate continues today. In the years that followed, Gibson accepted acting roles in action films, thrillers, and independent productions. While he was no longer the dominant Hollywood superstar of the 1990s, he remained active in the industry. He also continued developing new, directing projects. According to interviews and public reports, Gibson has expressed interest in telling ambitious stories that challenge audiences and explore themes of courage, sacrifice, and redemption. Those themes seem to reflect parts of his own life. Looking back, his journey contains almost every element of a Hollywood documentary. A talented young actor leaves home and dreams big. A surprise opportunity changes everything. Worldwide fame follows. Awards, wealth, and admiration seem endless. Then come mistakes, personal struggles, public backlash, career setbacks, and, finally, the difficult road toward rebuilding. Very few lives follow such dramatic highs and lows. One reason Gibson's story continues to attract attention is because it raises difficult questions that have no easy answers. Can someone be remembered for both extraordinary achievements and serious personal failures? Can a public apology repair broken trust? Should time change how society judges past actions? Different people answer those questions in different ways, and perhaps that is why Mel Gibson's story remains so compelling. It is not simply about fame. It is about human nature. It reminds us that success does not erase mistakes. At the same time, mistakes do not erase talent. Both truths can exist together. Throughout history, many remarkable people have lived complicated lives. Their accomplishments inspired millions, while their personal choices created lasting controversy. Mel Gibson belongs in that conversation. Whether people admire him, criticize him, or feel somewhere in between, few would deny the impact he has had on modern cinema. His performances in Mad Max, Lethal Weapon, and Braveheart helped define generations of moviegoers. His work as a director influenced filmmakers around the world. His controversies became cautionary lessons about fame, addiction, and the consequences of personal decisions. Everyone has faced moments where they wished they could rewrite a chapter of their life. Most of those moments happen in private. Mel Gibson experienced many of his in front of the entire world. That difference doesn't erase responsibility, but it does remind us how complicated the human journey can be. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson from his story. Talent alone cannot guarantee lasting respect. Success alone cannot protect a reputation. Every choice matters. Every action has consequences. And every life becomes a collection of decisions that history will eventually judge. As new generations discover his films, they will also discover the questions surrounding his life. Some will focus on his artistic achievements. Others will focus on his personal controversies. Most will likely see both. That balance may become Mel Gibson's true legacy, not a story of perfect success or complete failure, but one of remarkable achievement, painful mistakes, accountability, resilience, and an ongoing search for redemption. But this is only one story of fame, success, and sacrifice. Another Hollywood legend hides an even more surprising journey. One filled with secrets, shocking twists, and lessons that change the entertainment industry forever. Don't miss that documentary.